All right. So today what we're looking at is so we've been looking at creating a composition using some window photos of window frames and some jugs and pots and things. Ah, here's the other Jackie. Woohoo! There we go. She's in. Let her in first. Bonjour, Jackie. So we've been looking at creating our own compositions. So we're working on that last week, and I was doing a painting as well, inspired by Ben Nicholson, and there was another artist called Sarah Bowman as well, and a few other artists like Winifred Nicholson and Charles Levier, who all use often use like a Cubist style or like a very limited color palette in their work. And I talked a little bit as well about using the rule of thirds to create a composition and help create harmony or balance within a picture as well. Now there's another method which is even more accurate, which is known as the golden ratio, and it's similar to the rule of thirds, only there's some slightly different measurements. And the other interesting thing about this ratio is that you find it everywhere in nature. You even find it on the proportions of a person, a human being. So I'm going to show you a little bit of stuff about that, a bit of information about that, and how to use it in a composition, and also how other artists have used it as well. So we'll go over to the wall straight away. There we go. So here we are looking at everything that we were doing last week. This here was the picture that I was working on. I'll just move that up. Get rid of that one. Put that down there. See if I can make that. There we go. Right, so this is the picture that I was working on last week, and we've talked a little bit about artists that are doing similar things. So we've got Sarah Bowman over here in the corner, who paints all these seaside kind of scenes but looking through windows, and again, like as I mentioned, using a limited color palette in there, and these lovely whites and blues and greys that we mentioned before. So that was part of our inspiration for helping us create a composition. This one over here, Charles Levier, who has these stylized flowers, which I've also incorporated into my own picture just above that teapot there. So I've added those in as well, but you'll see the painting again in a few minutes that I worked on. And then of course we talked a lot about Ben Nicholson, who was a very famous artist in the 30s, 40s, 50s and the 60s, and he created these pictures that have simplified objects that overlap each other and intersect with each other, and sometimes you can see through and things. In the foreground there you see that little English flag, and then these boats towards the background. And I talked a little bit about the artist Alfred Wallace, who a lot of the Cornwall artists were inspired by at the time. So we're carrying on with this sort of idea and theme, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're looking at the golden ratio as well. There's Emma. So we're going to look at the golden ratio, and I'm going to show you a picture of that just over here, which I've just put on the old screen for you. So the top one is the golden ratio, and the bottom one is the rule of thirds. So often in photography we use the rule of thirds. I often use it in my artwork as well, but one that's even more accurate and closer to helping with harmonic division of objects within your picture, in other words making a balance and your picture look nice, is this above, which has got this spiral on it. So you'll see this spiral in a lot of nature, such as on shells, perhaps even the spiral of the Milky Way, or on those ferns that unfurl from a spiral, all that sort of thing. But you'll also find it on things such as on your hand, or on leaves on a plant. So I'm going to show you that now. I've got this this thing that I got off the internet called an eyebrow balance ruler. Which unbelievably you can use to measure out your eyebrows and make them look really really beautiful and accurate, but I've started using it for doing our art. So I'm going to go over to our over to my desk now. So here is my this is a plant. Somebody will be able to tell me what plant that is, because I can't remember the name of it at the moment. But before we look at that, here is the eyebrow balance ruler that I mentioned just a second ago, or calipers, and it's actually set to the golden ratio. So in nature, this ratio appears in loads of different things that you will find. So an easy one to show you is on your fingers. So from this digit to the bottom of that, to the end of your finger, if I line it up, you can see that we've got the golden ratio just there. And if you turn it over, you can also do it on your hand and your finger. So we can just about see it. It's a bit difficult to do it like this, but so we've got the finger and we've got my whole palm, and then from here you can also do your hand going up to your elbow as well. So we've got the golden ratio appearing on human beings, and that appears on things like, as I mentioned, people use it to measure out their eyebrows as well. And when I bought this, there was actually some pictures of it, of some people doing, I can't do it here, no, something like this anyway. So the distance between your eyebrows and the actual width of your eyebrows, so it's used to make them look really nice and balanced and beautiful and all that sort of thing. Now on this plant that I've got here, I'll just zoom in a little bit and see if we can do this. So I saw this morning in our house, because my wife got some flowers given to her, and if I line this up to this petal at the bottom here, and then to the top petal, you can see the ratio is appearing there. So you've got two petals which match up quite well to the golden ratio. So it's a thing that appears naturally within art and within nature, or I should say within nature, and you can use it within your art as well. So that's a really nice illustration. But there's, if you had one of these, and you can make these yourself, you will see that it is just everywhere in nature. So we can use this as a tool to help us work out and balance our compositions as well. So I'll just go back to this for a second. So when you're drawing out your design, you can start with the structure of a window frame. And if you remember me talking last week, I mentioned how I changed the shape of this window frame so that I could fit it in more of a square format. And then we've got different objects that overlap each other in here. And sometimes I don't actually paint the whole of an object so that we can see through, in the Cubist style, through objects such as this urn. You can see it runs through here. The windowsill runs through the teapot, because I haven't painted it all out, but then parts of it bring the objects out themselves. And down here, or on here, we've got these very stylized plants in the style of Charles Levier, who is just there. And then towards the back, I've added some Ben Nicholson houses and these lovely arcing shapes which also appear in the pots. So the idea is we're layering up all of these shapes to create a Cubist style picture. Now in this one I use the rule of thirds to create the design. So I'll just show you where those lines, or approximately where those lines are. because I haven't marked them in or I've painted over them. So we've got the thirds there. So we've got one line that runs right the way through the middle of the pot and through part of the teapot just there, or the urn in the teapot. And then if we divide it the other way, and I'm just sort of loosely doing this here, the center of the urn has got the crossover point that we've looked at with the rule of thirds, and then up the top we've got the hillside, and look, the plants also, or the flowers also, run through the rule of thirds lines as well. So we use the rule of thirds here to create the balance in the composition. So we're going to try, or at least if you're ready you can try. If you're not ready to do this yet, then that's absolutely fine. So you might know this portrait, the portrait by Leonardo da Vinci, and again this is the golden the spiral that uses the golden section, or the golden ratio. So if I just turn it around this way and get these calipers, eyebrow measurers, you can see again there that Leonardo has used the golden ratio to work out where he wanted things to be and how to create that balance within his portrait. So he's done it there, look. And then if we turn it around this way again, he has done it here as well. So the spiral starts at the bottom on the hand, sweeps up and round and into the all-important thing that people always talk about, which is her smile in there as well. So Leonardo has used this golden ratio to help create his composition. So fascinating. And then if we go over here, we've got I'll show you this one first. This is a photograph. Do you know, I don't know who the photographer is. I'm pretty sure it's a famous photographer because it does look familiar. But here we've got the golden ratio used to work out where the center of this aisle of trees is. Now this looks like Holland to me because it's very flat. It probably is. And then to work out where we wanted the center of the trees to be up here, we've also got the golden ratio used once more here, like that. So this would have been the photo would have been taken, and then the photographer would have worked out exactly where all the different elements of the picture go according to the ratio, and then he would have cropped it appropriately and so forth. So again, a really nice balanced composition using the golden ratio. Okay, this is George Seurat, who we've looked at I think a few times in other classes. So here we have the complete drawing of how you could divide up your picture and start working out where things are going to go within your own composition. Of course you can do it portrait as well, you don't have to do a landscape, but any shape that you've got to work with for your piece of work, you can use this golden ratio. Now the number for the golden ratio is 1 over 1.618. So this is the it's kind of like how to work it out when you're working out where to put them, a bit like you divide the picture into thirds if you were doing the rule of thirds. So I've written that on here. It would be 1.618, but in order to fit it inside a shape, we just times the width or the length of whatever piece of paper you've got by 0.168, and that will give you a measurement. And I'll show you that in a minute, because I know that can look a bit daunting. But just to go back to this Seurat picture just here, we've got this I think it's like a jetty or something, and a boat here. Look, the line runs all the way through there on one of these golden section areas, and the sail on this boat, again the golden section line runs through there, and there's a crossover point at the end just here too. So the artist is Georges Seurat has used the golden section to help him work out his composition in this picture. All right, so I'm going to draw this out and show you how to do it. It's not as difficult as it sounds once you know what to do. So this piece of paper, I'll just move this aside because I'll come back to that in a few minutes. So here's my piece of paper. You measure out the width of it. So the width of this particular piece of paper is 28 centimeters. It's there. And you get hold of a calculator and you take 28 and you times it by 0.618. Okay, so let's go on to calculator. So 28 centimeters times 0.618 is 17.3. So from one side of the picture to the other, you measure 17.3 centimeters. If you work in inches, you can do it in inches, of course. It's the same calculation, except for in inches. So here's my first line for the golden section, just there. And then I want to do it the other way, the other side too. So I'll turn it upside down and do 17.3 again. And 17.3. And then draw, oh, just check that one, 17.3, that's better. Draw a line down there. So I've got the first part of it. Now I'm going to do the width of the paper. Now I know that that's 21 centimeters, so I do exactly the same calculation. 21 times 0.618, and that gives me 12.97. So 12.97. 12.97. Do a vertical, do a line through there, and do it exactly the same as I did on the other area, or the other axis, and draw through there. So there we go. So now I've got in this area, that is the golden section there, or here, or here, or here. But basically we can use that to help us work out the best place to put things within the composition, within the picture itself. All right, so I drew what possible ideas you could do. So if you was working landscape, you might draw in your window frame like that. Okay, because we're doing window frames and views through windows. On this line through here, I could put my pot, and on this cup, on this line, sorry, I could put a cup. So I've got two lines. I've got the horizontal one and the two vertical ones have now got objects on them, because put them there because they balance out quite nicely. The point of this hill, again, meeting those vertical lines, and this line, which is another one of the golden section lines, becomes the horizon. So we end up with a more balanced composition. Okay, here's a portrait one. So again, exactly the same idea. We've got the frame of the window, we've got two pots on those lines, and I put a boat towards the back, and then on this line again, a sunshine. Okay, so that is the basic idea. Now, just before I go back to the composition that I made using this technique today, here we have a very small picture of Charles Levier's picture, view through a window, and you can see on here I've worked out using those calipers. I keep saying calipers today. Where have I put it? I've lost it now. Put it down. Oh, there they are. Right, so here are the calipers. So Let's just line that up. So one vertical line, and we've got the pot running through it just there. Turn it over. So this is using that 0.618, a line going through there for the side of the window, and the other line at the top there shows where the balcony is as well. And this little crossing over point just on these two flowers here. So you can see that the artist has used the this technique to work out the composition as well. And we've got another one here too. These two pictures may have been cropped slightly when I printed them, but it still illustrates quite well the idea of creating your own piece of artwork or composition, and a balanced or harmonic division of all the where you're going to put all of the shapes and things. All right, so I'll rub it on a bit more. Just hold on, bear with me. So this is the drawing that I made today. Let me just zoom out a little bit. So I've used this photograph of this window as my starting point. I divided it using 0.618, the whole of the piece of paper that is. And then I placed some objects within it as well. So this is the design. And I've used the whole of an A3 sheet of paper. There you can see the two vertical lines going up there of the golden ratio. And if you zoom in a little bit more, you can see two other ones going across that way. And again, I put those objects on those lines. So here we've got this little bird on a pot where the crossing over points of the horizontal and the vertical go. And here we've got the same thing on the pot. And if we go at the top, I've got a tulip on the two lines that cross over. And on this one, I've also got a house, and then I've hidden the sun just up there as well. Okay. So I shall be working into this a little bit later on when perhaps I've painted the other one a bit. I might just work on this actually. But I'm going to put some block areas of colour down on top, and then I'll start painting some highlights and shadows back over the top of that. All right, so I know that you're a lot of you are still busy with the things that you've been doing. So please keep doing that, and as soon as you need a bit of more guidance on using the golden ratio, just let me know. But remember, all you need to do is take the width, times it by 618, and do the length, and then you'll get your golden ratio lines to help you balance out your composition. Okay, so I know I've said quite a lot there. So I hope you understood most of what I said, but if you missed some of it, then just let me know and I'll have another chat with you in a minute. So I'm on the next piece. I'm going for something similar to this. Here I was just discussing how basically I go about making one of these pieces here. I use the rule of thirds for this piece, as I said earlier on. I'm probably going to revisit this one a bit later on. I did really enjoy painting this, but having drawn out a new composition today, I was quite keen to have a little play around with this one. So what I do right now is I start by doing something very similar to the one that I did last week, which is put some starting points down, which is some block colour over the whole of the composition to give me kind of an undercoat or a base to start painting over. I decided to go for the yellows again. On this one, I'm especially during this lesson, I'm a bit more strict with the different colours that I use. So I'm putting these ones down first of all. You can see this, this is a Sarah Bowman picture, so I'm kind of having that in mind a little bit. I'm not painting obviously the same colours as she did, but I am using the yellows and things, and here I've got a little bit of some burnt, sorry, not burnt sienna, what was it now? I can't remember at the moment. But anyway, I apply these warm sort of yellows and things over the top. Some of it's Naples yellow, some of it's cadmium yellow. There's also some yellow ochre and other little bits and pieces. So I just vary it a little bit, but I know that I want to stick with, I want to put as much white on there as possible when I add all the highlights in and so forth. I don't get too far today actually, because I ended up playing around quite a bit with various things on the picture. I was leaning over a little bit in this lesson, so sorry if my hair gets in the way, top of my head. So the nice thing about working over a background like this, as I've said a few times before, is that you get some of the colours coming back through, particularly if you add a little bit of water to your paint, your acrylic paint. But one of the things I really enjoy doing, especially during this project, this series of lessons, is adding in highlights and shadows to begin with on the objects. And I thought a little bit about the direction of the light coming through the window. It comes in from the left and hits the window on the right there. So that window frame gets lighter treatment a little bit later on. So here I'm looking and observing what I can see in the photograph of the window by looking for some of the lighter areas and putting those in. And then the nice thing about painting back over the top of the background as well, when you're blending, is that you can just add a little water and it'll mix in with the colour that you've already got there beneath. So you can have quite a bit of fun playing around, just experimenting with the colours in a picture like this. So I in the sky there I drew in quite a few of my own ideas. So I've got some sun rays, and as you can see there, I'm putting in some clouds which are diagonally swooping down into the horizon. And these are some of the nice reflections that I was looking at, very, very similar to what I was doing last week, but from a different photograph. So once all the colours are mapped in on most of the picture, you can start then building other colours on top and having a little play around with those, and having accents of colour that draw attention or just make the picture a lot more rich and interesting to look at. So here we go with this is a bit of the brown that I was using. This is burnt umber here with mixed with purple to create the shadows on the pots, and it's quite nice at this sort of stage. You can see different parts of the picture already starting to come to life because we're adding those highlights and shadows that I'm mentioning. And there goes in the cup. You can paint in quite loosely with your colours to begin with, you know, not worrying overly about getting everything so precise in the shapes that you've drawn on, because you know, you may want to change the shape slightly, or as you work into the picture you can refine the edges if you really want to as well. Sometimes that isn't necessary. Sometimes it's enough just to sort of put in the colours as they are. It depends what kind of look you're going for, I guess. So a few more shadows into the cup. On the edge and the lips of cups, for example, you can add extra highlights, and that helps to refine edges and things like that. So it really isn't always completely necessary to be perfect with your edges and lines and things, because you can refine them. The nice thing about acrylic is that it dries quickly, which means that it will be dry in no time at all, and you can paint over the top of it if you want to. If you want to delay the drying time of the paints, you can use something called a painting medium called retardant. which is quite good. Here I'm using a flat brush, which just happens to be about the right shape for the frames that I've drawn in. I've done one side there, you can see that that's highlighted, and the other side here is more in shadow because the light isn't falling on there so much. So it's taking a little bit more shape. We're getting on in the lesson a little bit now, so it must be about 8:30, I guess. So I'm just adding in highlights on top of the areas where the light is coming through the window, and that's giving those extra edges that quite a few of you have mentioned. You start doing the window frames and there's loads more that loads more little lines and details that you weren't expecting, but look, I can add those in once I put in a very basic kind of flat, using the flat brush, put my outline in, add the shadows in and all that sort of thing, and the highlights a little bit later, and you get enough detail to make that window frame look really nice. So here I'm just sweeping around with some purple, burnt umber, get a little bit of shadow in there as well. In a few minutes I decide that I want to go even darker with my shadows, so this is just a bit of purple and burnt umber there, but next I mix in some ultramarine and burnt umber to make this super dark brown, which always does look like a black, but it isn't. It's a dark brown. Add a little bit of water, and then I just sort of quite enjoyed sweeping around the edges there. And in the original photograph, there were these lovely deep shadows, obviously because not much light's getting through there because it's coming from outside. So here we go. So you can see the structure of the window frame taking shape, and here I'm using that same burnt umber ultramarine mix to get nice deep shadows in the window, and you can see those reflections in the windows starting to appear in there as well. So I get slightly further than this before we finish, and this is when the lesson was finished. We were just having a chat towards the end there. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you've got any questions, please let me know. Thank you.